People say, well, Steve Sarkisian, Dan Lanning, those are the best coaches in the sport, or two of the three best coaches in the sport. I completely align and I completely agree with that. People say, well, Kirby Smart, one of the best coaches in the sport. All that is fair. Kalen DeBoer's record against the aforementioned three coaches is 5-0. Hello and welcome in. It's always college football. Thanks for being here. Today is Thursday, March 27th, and we appreciate those of you that are coming to us via the podcast platform, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcast, you name it. Download the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. It helps us out greatly, and we appreciate you guys very much for doing it there. Also, if you could, go ahead and subscribe to the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. If you are here with us via the YouTube channel, we got tons of content that we're churning out on a regular basis. So the best way to get it is by subscribing on there and then subscribing on the podcast. We have a great show for you today. We will continue on with our ranking of the top 25 coaches in America. We did 25 through 11 just a couple days ago. So if you missed it, go back and check it out. It's been a little controversial. Several people have pushed back. Several people have contributed their own thoughts to the matter. That's the beauty of it. You may disagree. That's fine. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And if your coach was omitted and or your rival coach was included, I get that. I get the frustration. And I think that's what's beautiful about college football is the tribal nature of our debate. People throwing some elbows in the chat for sure. And we anticipate that to continue because there's only one coach and one fan base that's going to be happy. And that's the coach that's sitting on the number one line, which we will reveal here in this show. Told you a couple days ago, a few things that factor in to our assessment of these coaches. One, track record, right? How long have they been there? Tenure is factored in there. It's hard for me to rank a guy in the top 10 that had only been at a school for 1 year, maybe 2 years. For example, Curt Cignetti, an amazing job done at Indiana last year, didn't crack the top 10. He's ranked between 11 and 25, but just not enough time to assess whether or not he is a top 25 coach for me. Everyone's outlook on this is different, and I support however you want to rank your coaches. It's just how I see it at the moment. So tenure, track record, that is important. I also am going to be ranking these off trajectory. Does it feel like a program is on the way up? Does it feel like a program is ascended? Does it feel like a program has leveled off? Are they on the way down in some cases? And several coaches that we've listed, maybe it feels like they're on the way down. Several of you think that Lincoln Riley's on the way down. I push back on that a little bit, but I also acknowledge too that his high was pretty dang high, which is why he's still ranked in the top 20 for me. And like I said, if you missed it, go back and check it out. You can find out exactly where he was ranked. We also kind of want to make sure that we assess, skins on the wall, trajectory, tenure, and you also in these cases have to factor in the job too. I mean, a little bit when you get to the top 10, there are guys that are not going to have the most ridiculous win-loss record. But not all wins and losses are created equal. Some guys' schedules are harder. Some guys' circumstances are harder. There's a reason why Chris Kleiman and Matt Campbell are both ranked in the top 14. No, their records aren't going to necessarily blow you away with their record at their school, but the fact that they've done it at those places like Kansas State and Iowa State respectively makes their coaching job even more impressive. So I think we factor in a lot of different things. We put it in a bowl of soup and we try to give out the best product by being level-headed, honest, and willing to take your feedback. I can promise you, whether we like it or not, we have to take it, right? So we will kick things off now with our top 10 college football coaches in America. And I would imagine number 10 might be a little bit controversial for some of you. James Franklin is in at number 10. I got to be honest, prior to last year, I don't know if he would have cracked the top 10 for me. I think he's a great recruiter. I think they have done a really good job of acquiring talent, but the record against top tier competition still leaves me a little bit unsettled. And we're talking about top 10 coaches in America that has to factor in. If you're in the top 10, you better beat a lot of top 10 teams. And that is not something that James Franklin has done with great regularity in his 11 years at Penn State. Overall record, 101-42. If you look at his time at Vanderbilt prior to, he's 125-57. He has 6 10-win seasons, though. And I think that there is kind of a lot to acknowledge with what's been accomplished. While people will look at Penn State and think that they're on the same level as a Michigan, as an Ohio State, historically speaking, that hasn't always been the case. Ohio State's kind of in a league of their own. But Penn State, albeit, no, their program is not Ohio State level. But I think if you look at the floor that has been created by James Franklin, it's pretty admirable. They've had some really good performances in New Year's Six bowl games. They've won the Fiesta Bowl. They've won the Cotton Bowl. He won the Rose Bowl in 2022. And they have finished ranked inside the top 10 5 different times since 2016. But the elephant in the room is the 1-15 ranking against the top 5. 4-20 ranking against the top record against the top 10. That's the problem. But if you look at just the consistency that his program has had, it is pretty admirable, which is why James Franklin lands a spot in our top 10 at number 10 here for 2025. At number 9, a lot of pushback probably going to be felt here. We have a strong listening contingent with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish faithful. Brian Kelly is in at number 9. To be honest with you, I might have had him a little bit higher a couple years ago. Probably would have had him in the top 5. The guy's won everywhere he's been. Okay, he's won at Notre Dame, he won at Cincinnati, he won at Central Michigan prior to, and he's now winning at LSU. Now, is he winning with as much consistency as one would like? No, he hasn't quite figured out the recipe yet on the defensive side. It's taken him a couple years. He's been through a couple defensive coordinators. Here's hoping that they take big strides in 2025, because if they do, they might have the offense that could lead to Brian Kelly's first national championship. He's just 29-11 in his 3 years at LSU, which is not ideal. And I think people now have found their assessment of Brian Kelly. They're kind of following the low-hanging fruit of, well, look how good Marcus Freeman is. Maybe it was Brian Kelly that was holding Notre Dame back because he won 113 games at Notre Dame, but he didn't ever get them over the hump. He didn't ever win playoff games. So I think that's a little bit unfair, but it is part of the story right now, which is why Marcus Freeman has yet to be named in our top 25 coaches. Spoiler alert, he's probably coming up here in just a little bit. I think Brian Kelly is still a relatively underrated figure in college football. He's won a lot of games, and while the national championship hasn't gone his way, his team consistently improves. His team has had a Heisman Trophy winner, and his team has done a pretty good job of accommodating the modern era of college football. He uses the portal well. They have the number 1 ranked transfer class in 2025. He's done a pretty good job from a recruiting standpoint. He's got 3 straight top 10 recruiting classes. But I do think at some point how they play in the first game of the year needs to be factored in. He's 0-3 in season openers at LSU and probably shouldn't have lost any of the 3 with the exception of the 23 game against Florida State. So looking at Brian Kelly at number 9, I think it's appropriate, but I can understand why people might push back on us having him ranked so high. At number 8, in my opinion, this is the most underrated coach in college football. And not from us. I think we have him appropriately rated, by the way. We have this guy appropriately rated in the top 8. But nationally, when people think top coaches in the sport, his name doesn't often come up. And it's Jeff Brohm at Louisville. Now, he's 19-8 in his time at Louisville. If you look at how he's performed in his 11 years as a head coach, dating back to his time at Purdue, he's 85-52. But if you look at the 19 wins that he has so far in his time there coaching the Cardinals, those 19 wins are the best since Bobby Petrino won 20 against Conference USA competition in 2003 and 2004. He's having to do it against ACC competition, which is a whole heck of a lot more difficult than playing against the Conference USA like Louisville played in a while back. They're currently ranked 8th from a recruiting standpoint in 2026. And he's done a really good job of identifying pieces in the portal and finding diamonds in the rough on the recruiting trail for quite a while. I think Jeff Brohm, dating back to his time at Purdue, just as far as sheer XO coaching, creating an advantage for his personnel, does as good a job as anybody in the sport. By the use of misdirection, by the use of screens, by the use of creating problems for the opposing defense, few people in the sport do more with less. When he was at Purdue, they quite literally at times could not run the football, and yet they still found ways to score points. It's amazing. There were times at Purdue where they could not block the elite pass rushers of the Big Ten, and yet they still had one of the best performing offenses in the entire conference. He has, remember, at times gone and beaten Ohio State in convincing fashion with Purdue personnel. Very, very impressive. I think what Jeff Brohm's done in his entire tenure as a head coach. And I think the best is yet to come for Louisville and what he will do at his alma mater. At number 7, and a guy who would have very easily been in the top 3 had we put this list together 4 or 5 years ago, it's Dabo Swinney of Clemson. He is by far the best coach in the history of Clemson football. He's been there for 17 years. Very few in the sport have a better track record than Dabo Swinney. Currently, coaching, I'm not sure there is a better track record. He's 180-47 in his 17 years. He's got 2 national championships. We know the other coach that has 2 national championships, and he's finished ranked in the AP top 25 14 straight years. Now, 13 of the last 14 years, he has won 10-plus games. Think about that. 13 of the last 14, 10-plus wins. And granted, the anomaly in that category is in 2023, he won just 9, so he didn't miss it by much. He's also 12-9 in bowl games, and he made the college football playoffs 7 times. The big question about Dabo Swinney, though, in the modern day is how adaptable has he been and will he be in the future in the NIL transfer portal era? I think Dabo Swinney might be doing it a bit differently than some of the other guys that will be ranked at the top of the list. But it doesn't mean the way he's doing it is wrong. He's just looking at it more holistically. He's putting a greater emphasis on culture and a greater emphasis on retaining his top players as opposed to going out and stealing other teams' top players. Now, they went and got in the portal a little bit this year. They added a receiver. They added a defensive end. They've added a few, but they're not going to ever be a team that majors in the portal. They might just minor in it, and it depends on what their team needs may be. And those portal additions might serve more from a depth standpoint and to allow some position flexibility that they didn't have prior to the arrival of some of those portal additions. So I look at Dabo Swinney and people will say, not today, not anymore. He's lost a step. I respectfully disagree. I just think Dabo Swinney believes what he believes, and for good reason, because he averages over 10 wins a season and has in his 17-year career as the head coach of the Clemson Tigers. So I'm super bullish on Clemson this year. If things go sideways, if things go off the rails and they don't have the success I anticipate this season, then I could see Dabo Swinney's ranking dropping significantly. But I think this is the year they've had circled. This is the one they've been building towards. And this is the one where they very well could win the national championship for the first time in quite some time. At number 6, he's the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. He's Kalen DeBoer. People will push back on Kalen DeBoer because of the performance that his team had last year. They were 9-4. And that is understandably disappointing when you factor in what Alabama had done in the 17 years prior to Kalen DeBoer's arrival. But I also advise you to acknowledge the fact that Alabama had 47 transfer portal entries after the 23 season heading into the 24 season. Kalen DeBoer's roster, people will look at the roster and the stars and people will say, oh, it's the best roster in the sport. As someone that is very familiar with the personnel on that roster, it was far from the best roster in the sport. They had great days and they had atrocious days. Does that fall on the coach? Absolutely. But part of the reason why Kalen DeBoer is at number 6 for me is the track record of success. Granted, he has not been a head coach for some outrageous amount of time. It hasn't been 20 years. He doesn't have dating back to his time at the Power 5 level. He's only been at the Power 5 level a handful of years. He's been a head coach for 3 years at the Power 5 level. But he won a bunch of games at Fresno, and he won a bunch of games at the NAIA level where he had a bunch of national championships prior to getting some coordinating jobs, being at Indiana, being at Fresno, being all over the place. But you look at the record that he had at Washington and what he did in developing Washington's personnel and getting to the point where they were close to being competitive in the national championship game. That Michigan team was stacked. Their roster was outrageous, and Michigan eventually wore them down. But people forget that was a one-score game in the fourth quarter, and as far as personnel was concerned, Michigan had a pretty significant advantage over that Washington team from a personnel standpoint. The game prior to, Washington did not have a personnel advantage over Texas. People say, well, Steve Sarkisian, Dan Lanning, those are the best coaches in the sport, or two of the three best coaches in the sport. I completely align and I completely agree with that. People say, well, Kirby Smart, one of the best coaches in the sport. All that is fair. Kalen DeBoer's record against the aforementioned three coaches is 5-0. 2-0 against Dan Lanning, 2-0 against Steve Sarkisian, and 1-0 against Kirby Smart. Overall, he is 13-2 against AP-ranked opponents in the last 3 years. The guy has pretty impressive track record of success. And I think when you look at where things could head, it's hard to judge Alabama based off of 1 year. Had I put this list together, Kalen DeBoer might have been in the top 2 or 3 had I done it prior to the 2024 season. He's dropped a little bit now to number 6, but I think the arrow could be pointing up because he's going to have his guys and his culture that he will create now in Tuscaloosa for the Crimson Tide. Still super bullish on what Kalen DeBoer will do, and still super impressed with what Kalen DeBoer has done in his career leading up to last season. So not selling yet, going to hold on that stock. I think Kalen DeBoer is rightfully still ranked in the top 6 amongst his peers at the head coaching spots in college football. At number 5, it's Dan Lanning, who's off to a blistering start from a record standpoint since taking over as the head coach at Oregon. He is a remarkable 35-6. Those 35 wins are by far the most to start a career at Oregon. Pretty impressive to think about what's been accomplished in his tenure. What's most impressive is probably the 10-6 record against AP-ranked teams and his ability to adapt to the modern era. Granted, he's got a ridiculous amount of resources at his disposal. Oregon's one of the best jobs in the country because of their access to resources. But he has put those resources to work and been thoughtful about going and attracting the right players onto his roster. They had top 5 recruiting class last couple of years. They've had the top 5 recruiting classes, top 15 recruiting classes the last couple of years. They are an AP number 1 team in the country going into last year. And I think had the structure of the college football playoff been different, maybe the outcome would have been different for the Ducks there in the Rose Bowl when they played against a juggernaut in Ohio State. I look at those 6 losses, and they've come against 4 teams. He's lost to Georgia in 2022. He lost to Washington twice. He lost to Oregon State. And to be honest with you, it's almost hard to remember some of the other ones. He, of course, lost to Ohio State. And when you can think about those losses and you can remember those losses, it just goes to show you how few there are and how impressive his short tenure has been and the trajectory that Oregon might be on. They're not going anywhere. They're going to continue to be a fixture at the top of the Big Ten, and they're going to continue to be a fixture when it comes to competing for championships for the foreseeable future. Now into our top 4 for our top head coaches in college football in 2025. At number 4, after a breakthrough season, it's Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame. 33-10 in his 3 years. He also, you have to take into account 1 game prior to that 3-year stint. He did get credit for the Oklahoma State bowl performance. He lost that game, but really in the last couple of years, you have seen a breakthrough from Notre Dame in toughness, physicality, what they were able to do last year on offense, the addition that he made by going and hiring a big-time offensive coordinator and the results that have since come with it. Marcus Freeman is in there at 33-10. Probably would not have cracked the top 4 going into last year. I've always been super bullish on what Marcus Freeman might do as a head coach. But last year, I think solidified everybody's opinion about just how good this team might be and how good they might be in the foreseeable future with Marcus Freeman's enthusiasm and energy that he's infused into the program. 5-2 in bowl games. They had 14 wins last year. That's the most in the history of Notre Dame football. And he is among the many Notre Dame head coaches that have been to a national championship and or won a national championship in their third year with the program. Obviously, Brian Kelly made it there as well in his third year. We know Marcus Freeman did, but guys that have won it, Lou Holtz, Stan Devine, Ara Parseghian, Frank Leahy, they all won national championships in their third year. I think what he did last year, though, kind of made everybody realize just how good this guy may be. They're 14-6 against AP-ranked competition. That's an amazing record at Notre Dame. But people will point to the lapses in performance against NIU, against Stanford the year before, and some of the inconsistencies that we've seen from not so top tier competition. Marshall the year before that. I look at the bigger picture and I look at what Notre Dame's talent profile has looked like and the personnel that they had on their roster in the Brian Kelly era. And they were talented, by the way. They had talented guys throughout Brian Kelly's tenure, but I look at the talent that they now have and how good they were on defense in particular, and their style on defense and how NFL-centric it is. And it just makes me feel super excited about what's coming for the Fighting Irish. I think you look at just what they might have at quarterback this year, how they kind of got the monkey off their back last year in big bowl games by beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, by winning against Penn State in the Orange Bowl, and winning a BCS New Year's Six bowl game in a really long time. Super impressive. So I think when you look at Notre Dame and you look at Marcus Freeman, he's one of the great young coaches in America. I think he will win a national championship. I really believe that. It's just a matter of when, with what he's shown already in a very short period of time, with the physicality, the toughness, the emphasis on the line of scrimmage, the disruption that they cause defensively, and the identity that they have offensively in playing collaborative football on both sides of the ball. At number 3 is Steve Sarkisian at Texas. He's 38-17 in his 4 years at Texas. Overall, in his 11 years as a head coach, dating back to his time at Washington at SC, he's 84-52. Those 38 wins that he's had in the first 4 seasons, that ties Mac Brown for the most wins ever at Texas in the first 4 years of his tenure. He's 2-3 in bowl games, and he has lost some disappointing bowl games. He lost, obviously, to Ohio State last year, but he played Ohio State better than anybody in the college football playoff. He lost to Washington the year before, where they did not play well early, finally got it going late, but just ran out of time and opportunities as the clock expired there at the very end. But if you look at the program that he inherited with Tom Herman, wasn't in bad shape, but it was a program that had been floundering for quite some time, a program that had had some ups and downs, a program that had done some good things, but they really never, ever reached their ceiling. At least it didn't feel like they had in about 15 years. And here you are now with Steve Sarkisian leading the Longhorns. You think they're going to be there every year. I feel pretty confident, actually, that they're going to be there every year. They've won back-to-back AP top 5 finishes. That's the first time since Texas has done that since 2008 and 2009. He's 12-12 against AP top 25 teams, but like I said, if you look at his performance the last couple of years, it looks much better. And they have the number 1 ranked recruiting class and have had 4 straight top 5 classes under his leadership. I get the sense that Texas is just getting started. They're not going anywhere. And under Steve Sarkisian, they're going to continue to attract high-level talent, high-level personnel, and they're also capable of going into the portal and adding pieces to fortify at positions of need. Texas is going to win a natty under Steve Sarkisian. I feel very confident in saying that. It could come as early as this year. I'm not sure it would surprise anybody if they broke through behind Arch Manning at the quarterback spot. At number 2, fresh off his first national championship, it's Ryan Day. And it's easy to point to Ryan Day's shortcomings against Michigan to find flaws in his resume as a head coach. But if you look at the consistent performance, he's 70-10 in his time at Ohio State. He's obviously won the national championship. He's got 10 plus wins in 6 of the last 7 years. The 1 year he didn't have 10 plus wins because they only played 8 games. That was in 2020 during COVID. He's done a great job in bowl games as well, and he's 6-4 in bowl games. I also think too, what if they had kicked a field goal in the Peach Bowl in 2022? What if they had kicked that field goal, made that field goal? They win that game. They go on to pound TCU in the national championship. What would the narrative be about Ryan Day? Probably that he's amazing and is worthy of a top 2 ranking in the sport. He's 24-9 against AP top 25 teams. He's finished in the top 10 every single year. He's got one of the best recruiting classes every single year. Never been a time in which he hasn't. And he continues to produce first-round picks at a remarkable clip. I look at Ohio State. I think they are as steady and as stable and I'm as confident picking them week in and week out as I am just about any other team. You look at what he's been able to produce from a quarterback standpoint, how he's been able to attract talent, how they've utilized resources, how they've utilized the portal, and how I think they've had to adjust a little bit. Now, people will point to, well, they struggle in the trenches against Michigan, and that is all the indicator you need to keep him out of the top of your rankings. Fair enough. The Michigan performance is a black eye. But if you look at the bigger picture, it's hard for me to ignore the greatness that's been on display from Ohio State while Ryan Day's been running the program. So I think he is appropriately ranked at number 2 in the sport behind our number 1 coach in college football. That is the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs. It's Kirby Smart. 105-19 in his 9 years as the head coach. He's won back-to-back national championships in 2021 and 2022. But if you think back to 2017, his second year in Athens, they were this close to winning a national championship that year as well. In bowl games, he's been amazing. If you look back, the guy's just steady, consistent, and sometimes it feels like Georgia's never going to lose a game. Now, granted, his first year, not so great, but that was his first year. It was 2016. It was a million years ago. Ever since 2017 and beyond, they've been off the charts good. They've been recruiting at a ridiculous clip. They're producing first-round talent like there's no tomorrow, and they've had at least one first-round pick in every single draft dating back to the 2018 NFL draft. What I like most about Kirby Smart is there's an edge that his team plays with. They are a violent football team. They are not a team that teams want to play against. They're violent, they're physical, and while last year, if I'm going to rank Kirby Smart's Georgia football teams, if I'm ranking them 1 through 9, the 2024 version of Georgia might be 6 or 7, maybe 5 or 6, and yet he still won the SEC championship. Think about that. He won the SEC championship with a backup quarterback in the second half of that football game because his starter was injured on the final play of the half. So the fact that he had way less than his best stuff, and yet his team still found a way to win on a week-to-week basis en route to a championship in the conference that is the most difficult to win, tells you all you need to know about the health and status of the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, are they going to be as good in 25, 26, 27 as they were in 21, 22, 23? I don't know the answer to that. But knowing that Kirby Smart is consistently landing top recruiting classes and has continued to develop a culture of toughness and physicality, I don't think they're going anywhere. And I think they'll be back in the mix for a national championship this year and probably every year for the foreseeable future. Kirby Smart is the top coach in college football for 25. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. Continue to encourage all of you to like, to rate, and to subscribe to the show wherever you get the show. I know many of you are going to have issues with our top 10 coaches in college football. Hit us up in the comments. It's fine. We're good. We can agree to disagree. It's great. We love it. It's fun. We all have different perspectives with what's been accomplished by a lot of these guys. And from year to year, it's kind of amazing how things change and fluctuate. So if you're number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 this year, you could be out of the top 25 next year if your team falls flat with a really substandard performance. And then if you're unranked, you could be in the top 10 like that if you have a big breakthrough with a surprisingly great year. So I look forward to continuing to do this again next year and the year after that. And as long as I'm doing this, we're doing a top 25 coaches ranking because it's a lot of fun and it really gets the juices flowing. So for all of us here at Always College Football, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day. Remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.